Helldivers 2. This is the big one. This is the timeline we have for you here. This is what I would like to say is presented to us, the super citizens, from the Ministry of Truth. So my warning is take this with a grain of salt. Apparently last Thursday, Helldivers 2 publisher Sony announced its intent to reintroduce its PlayStation Network account linking required to the game on PC. The requirement was initially disabled on game launch to help with server load. As a result, many players were unaware of it. So, one, helping with server load would have mean bringing the PSN as a requirement to reduce the amount of people that were coming on in that beginning. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me already off of the bat. I don't know how that helps with server loads by just opening the floodgates. Maybe they wanted to hit those peak numbers and they don't care what rules they broke on the way there. And I think maybe that's the decision that was made. They said, we'll figure this out later. Let's deal with the consequences later and open it up. What do you think happened on those opening days, Doragon?
I think you're thinking of the wrong servers. If you look at the popularity of Helldivers, Sony and Arrowhead would have known ahead of time, especially from pre-order numbers, roughly how many players they were going to get. If you've got all of those PC players, bear in mind, just over half of the Helldivers 2 player base is on PC. If you've got just over half of your player base also trying to sign up for a PlayStation Network account and overloading the PlayStation Network servers, that doesn't just then have an impact on the Helldivers 2 servers, that has an impact on every PlayStation Network game going. So your Destiny players, your Call of Duty players, your Fortnite players, your Apex players. It would have had an effect on your Crash Team Racing players, your Gran Turismo players, your Formula 1 2024 players. This is the server overload I think they were trying to avoid, knowing how big the pre-orders were getting and how much word of mouth this was going to spread about how great this game was. They didn't want to overload and crash the PlayStation Network because there's more than just Helldivers on there. So doing away with that at the beginning, I kind of understand from a technical standpoint. And it was also quite obvious that this was a short-term thing and that you would need a PlayStation Network in time. It was all over the store page. It was quite obvious. It was on all of your pre-orders, all of your post-launch orders. If you bought that game, it told you were going to need a PlayStation Network account to play the game in the future. It just said, currently, you don't need it. At some point, that currently is going to become, currently you do need it. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think that was more PlayStation Network servers that they were worried about with that one.
Well, that is the story the Ministry of Truth is putting forward. This led to a review bombing uproar from the quote-unquote super citizens after hearing the Ministry of Truth. So as Sony holds Helldivers 2 in many regions where PSN is not available, if the requirement went live again, it would prevent those players in those countries from playing the game they paid for. So at this point, I believe there was massive overlook. There was reason for PC players to be outraged. Their purchase was just about to go null and void if you were located in these countries. However, my thinking again is that this was all a marketing tactic. Why release this information on Thursday, just before the weekend, just enough time to rally all the people and get ready for review bombing over the weekend? I'm not sure. Make it the talk of the weekend. This is not something that makes sense to me. Why would you release information that would therefore shut out so many people? Either we have an interim CEO at PlayStation who is very green and maybe making decisions without looking at this stuff very closely. I'm not sure. Why do you think that that these countries were shut out with an order from PlayStation? Do you think that was an oversight, or do you think that they wanted to do that?
I think it was a problem of PC players not knowing how to read English or Malay or Hollandaise or any language that it was written on Steam. This wasn't a secret. This was not one of those situations where it was sprung on people at the last moment. It has been on the Steam page of Helldivers 2 since before launch, that you will at some point in the future need a PlayStation Network account in order to play. The problem arises in those 177 countries where PlayStation Network doesn't exist. If you needed a PSN to play this game, why was it on sale in those countries? So for those 177 countries, they've got every right to moan, to protest, to negatively review the game, because they've been sold something in their territory, in their local currency, that they were able to then play. And quite rightly, they probably had the idea of, well, if PSN isn't here, they'll have a way around it for folks in these regions if they're selling it here. And that is a totally fair thought process to have. For those in the regions where PlayStation Network exists, suck it up, make an account, get over it. It was blatantly obvious, it was on every storefront. Just read something and don't moan because you can't be bothered to read the fine print on a contract. That's your problem, not anybody else's. So there's two sides to it. Those in the PSN areas, get over it. Those outside the PSN areas, completely justified in their outrage. And Sony basically had a gross oversight. They just saw money signs, they saw dollars, they saw pounds, they saw yen, and they went, yeah, let's get this as many places as we can. And then they released it on the standard news release schedule. Any announcements, any news that they release comes out on a Thursday afternoon here in the UK. And then Tuesday is when things happen. So they announced it on a Thursday and went off for the weekend. And of course, people were unhappy over the course of the weekend when no one at PlayStation who can reverse these decisions was working. It was a bit of a cluster of a multitude of facets, and most of it is people not reading and understanding words correctly on both sides of the fence.
So my question is the blame on Steam for allowing a game to be purchased in a region off of their network that was never to be accessed there?
I don't think so, no. Steam is a storefront similar to the likes of eBay. So if I go and list something on eBay, I can't say that you can come and pick it up if you're living in Australia. Because that's one hell of a trek for you to come to the UK to pick it up. It's not feasible, it's not realistic, it's not on eBay to manage and monitor that, that's on me, the seller. So I would say it's the same sort of thing for Steam. Steam is a worldwide storefront, a worldwide electronic storefront. It is therefore on the publisher, in this instance, PlayStation, Sony Interactive Entertainment. It is on them to make sure that they have sold that in regions where it is going to be playable evermore, sort of thing. So I'd say that's a Sony problem, not a Steam problem.
So that bodes more to my theory that they knew the whole time. So after 4 days of intense backlash, Sony finally backpedaled, reversing its decision and axing the account linking update altogether. Now, interesting move, not signing up to everyone to PSN, but however, it just seems to be almost planned. Why would 200,000 reviews, perhaps the release into all these other countries, could bring about possible suits? I'm not sure. For whatever reason, apparently they backed down, or perhaps it was the quote-unquote might or rallying of the community that they had wanted from the very beginning, and they had accomplished that. And we see that Sony, people don't like it, people do like it, people have taken it as a victory for PC. I myself feel like this is marketing, Guerrilla 101, create a campaign that is outside of the box. Because as soon as this backtracking had happened, guess who returns back on top with over 200,000 positive reviews? So this, to me, spells out, bring on the Among Us guy, because I'm calling out sus right here. How did they get all those reviews just to about face and turn around? This was a little drama that played out between Arrowhead and Sony, and we all watched, and we all logged on to Helldivers some more and talked about Helldivers. So what they wanted to happen, happened. Why do you think, in your mind, after me giving my conspiracy theories with my tinfoil hat, why did Sony backtrack?
They were going to lose a ton of money. They have a peak at the moment of around 460,000 players on Steam. When more than half of your Steam players give you a negative review in the course of 3 days, that's a quarter of your revenue from your best-selling title in years disappearing in front of your eyes. No corporation of that size wants to lose a quarter of their best revenue stream. Of course they were going to backtrack. They had to backtrack, and it was the actions of those 200,000+ people negatively reviewing the game, because, rightly so, for many of them it was missold to them. And as you stated, there would then be lawsuits off the back of it, many of them class actions, many of them anti-competitive lawsuits in many different countries, which would absolutely decimate Sony because they would lose every single one of them. They had no choice. They had to backtrack. They had to change tack, and they had to make it more clear for any future release what is required, what third-party linking is needed for certain aspects of the title. You can't now do it after the fact for an already live game sold in areas where this third-party linking can't happen. It was money. It was money talking that made them backtrack.
Could have been. CEO of Helldivers 2, Arrowhead, has started a community-made design for an in-game cape cosmetic that memorializes the ordeal. So this, to me, highlights my suspicions theory. It looks to me that we are getting a cape that signifies the negative reviews on Steam. The effort that was either fabricated or not fabricated, because it seemed to make quite the turnaround within 4 days. Guys, take it from me, a concerned citizen, or the mouth of the Ministry of Truth, Doragon. We have different theories on this one about what happened.
Why does that make me the bad guy dictatorship overlord?
The Ministry of Truth is just telling us the truth, right? But yeah, here we have it. Community design. Accidental design is pretty cool from a community member. And then here we have the little image of what it could be. And I definitely think I see that coming. All in all, over the weekend, I think they created a story within PC communities, banding together and making changes within the game they loved. It's going to bring them back to the game. And I think that's what they wanted, and that's what they accomplished. I think the decision to get rid of PSN, to open it up to all of these places, was a move made back when they were releasing the game, and I don't know. I'm not there, but I don't think they were going to backtrack it after selling to all those countries.
I think you are giving a giant corporation far too much credit there. There were real people who got abused this last weekend. Many community managers of Arrowhead we know, because the company have spoken about it, they've been given company-issued therapy because of what happened this past weekend. You don't treat people like that if it's a marketing thing. You don't put people in that firing line. You put everything in place to make sure that it goes off without a hitch, and it's all positive news around the game. I know no news is bad news. I know that saying, but it's not true. We know it's not true in this world, and bad news is terrible. It's hurt people. This is short-sighted idiocy from PlayStation and Sony. And
there we have it. The timeline as we know it now. what happened on Helldivers Gate with the PSN login. It is now reverse tracked. All the reviews are back to where they started, and all the login requirements are back to where they started. The only thing new is a cape memorializing the event, something they did before. And also, a heads up, Helldivers Discord just announced they reached 1 million users. So, who knows what happened, what the advantages were, but I definitely see some things going up for Arrowhead after this debacle. Who knows? We get told one side of the story, and whether that's the whole truth, half truth, only we can decipher it.
It's gone well for Arrowhead. It's had them come out looking really good. It's been a terrible news cycle for PlayStation as a platform. It hasn't reflected well on them, but it's also strong enough to survive something like this. So yeah, you might be right that everybody comes out even better than when they went in, despite short-sighted idiocy and foolhardiness.
Yep. But obviously some complainers can get too aggressive, and nobody likes to see that. This is a gaming industry. Everyone's gamers. Let's not threaten people's lives or stuff like that. That's over the border.